Krista's or Kimberly's hiding from us. Something's wrong with her video, but she'll come on. She loves our faces. Okay, so we are going to get started. I know Lindsey knows a lot of you because she is a frequent Christmas Affair guest. But Lindsey Scoggins is just someone that I have grown to love. Her twin sister, Leslie Gandy, is one of my dearest friends and a member of the Junior League, has been on a Christmas Affair 2015, shared decorations. And that's the first time I got to meet Lindsey. And then as I got to know her, what I found is this incredibly savvy business owner, entrepreneur, CEO of her own empire. Kimberly, nice background and attire for the occasion. But yeah, Lindsey to me is like the total package of someone that was so skilled and knowledgeable about what she does, had a vision, and really took her destiny in her own hands, and does it in a way that is so sleek and cool, but at the same time really authentic and genuine and not intimidating, right? When you think of a big jewelry designer in New York City that works with all these high-end people, you know, she still has time for her friends in Texas that might not be as fancy, and makes it super fun. So that's really my personal introduction of my friend Lindsey. But Lindsey, before we dive into the nuts and bolts of the questions about that we need to know about diamonds, I would love for you to share with the audience how you began your career in the diamond industry.
Sure. And I'll just say before I start that my Texas clients are usually the fanciest.
Oh.
So they're way fancier than New York. But my career started right out of college. I got a degree in architecture, and right after graduation, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, if I wanted to go to grad school, if I wanted to start working at a firm. I was a little burnt out from the grind of architecture. And so a friend of mine had gotten a job at the corporate office of Zales, which is in Dallas. And I had agreed prior to that to move with her to Dallas just no matter what. And so while I was interviewing for jobs after we had moved, I went to have lunch with her one day, and I met her manager. She was training, and so I met her manager. And she was training in a store, and before she moved to the corporate office. And I met her manager, and he called me the next day, and he was like, "I know you're looking for a job in a different field, but I have an opening, and I'd love for you to come in and try it out for the time being." And I was like, not really what I want to do, but I had this love of jewelry. My mom had made me this really beautiful ring for my 21st birthday, and it was custom, and it was so special to me. And so I was like, well, I love the field. So I started working there, and we had a bench jeweler in the back, which not every store had, but I spent most of my time with him instead of selling. And within 6 months, I was at the corporate office, and I ended up staying there for nearly 10 years, working my way up. And I did so many things there. I was really lucky to have a bunch of great mentors. And I created the international sourcing organization for the company. And then I ended up running a $300 million category my last 2 years there. And then in 2012, I moved to New York. My personal life brought me to New York. And that's where I switched sides and went to the supply chain side. And I became the head of product development for a major diamond supplier. And I did that for a few years. And about 3.5 years ago, I started my own company. So, quick timeline.
So people are texting me while you're talking. What a major, incredible career story. It is quite challenging for people to take that leap to start their own company. And you're being very humble about your journey. How did you do it? How did you take that jump?
It's something that I always wanted to do. One of my very first question when I got to the corporate office at Zales, on my very first day, they were taking me around to meet, merchandising and planning and all this stuff. And I was like, where does the design team sit? And they were like, oh, we don't have a design team. Our vendors do that, and then we just pick stuff. And I was like, this is a $2 billion company. How are we not in front of that? And this was in 2003. So it was still very much like the retail revolution had not happened yet with cutting out wholesale and all that stuff. But I just really loved the business of retail, and I love the materials that go into jewelry. They're, they're natural. They come from the earth. It's just such an interesting and unique supply chain to deal with that I just delved in and made a career out of it. And then on the design front, moving to New York was really what helped me get into the design, like really dive into the design, because when I was at Zales, I was really I was doing spreadsheets all day. I was not able to really have any focus on product development as much as I wanted to. I was able to like develop collections, but not in the design sense. And a lot of it was, how can we make this commercial enough to sell to thousands of people? And so moving to New York, I got to experience developing jewelry for a number of different clientele, because we had a few different brands that we owned. So we had the commercial end, and then we had the very high end. And so after a few years, I was in charge of licensing for this company. And so I was meeting with all of these brands, these very well-known brands, Disney, Kate Spade, Jenny Peckham. It was, all these brands that were like, we want to have a jewelry line, and we want you to design it, and then we want you to put our name on it, and we want you to pay us a really ridiculous royalty. And I did that, and it was great. But after a couple of years, I was like, I really would like to put my own name on stuff. So I started my own brand very, very modestly. I started it just out of my apartment and spent a few $100s on a website. And I just launched that way. And it morphed into this studio that I'm in now, overlooking a very sad Fifth Avenue today. But yeah, so I've been doing that for about 3.5 years, and now other clients.
Well, so you mentioned you were going to give us a tour of your studio. Let's see it.
All right, so it's small, it's not big, but this is I'm currently sitting at my desk, but this is where you enter. This painting behind me I used to paint with my grandmother, and so this is one of her last paintings, and I hung it behind me. That's the Baytown, if anyone's familiar with it. But this is my little kitchen champagne bar, where I have champagne and wine. Oh, hello. Champagne and wine and scotch. Then my little sitting area, where we have little client parties where we look at gemstones and jewelry all day. And then this is my view of Fifth Avenue. So this is Rockefeller Center across from me, and it's totally empty. And then that's Saks and St. Patrick's Cathedral down there, and the Scribner Building. So I have a really lovely view, and it's nice to be off of the street, away from some of the noise.
It's a really cool space. I'm thinking, gosh, I can't wait to get back to New York so I can come visit it. Well, so tell us a little bit about your designs. What do you do that makes it unique from other people or other lines that we might see?
So I really try to, so I always have, I always end up going back to kind of my architectural aesthetic that I was so attracted to, that industry for. I use a lot of geometry and a lot of lines of extension, and I design everything from, from a 360-degree point of view. So the most important thing that I do is I try to incorporate, a personal touch that may tell a story for the client. If they have something significant that they want to celebrate, or if they have a special story. I like to include little symbols they're usually pretty esoteric, and like it's more of an if you know kind of kind of detail instead of like an in-your-face symbol. But I think it's really important if you're going to invest money in something that's being made just for you and it's being made one of a kind, it needs to be, you know, special and heirloom quality. So that's what I aim for with everything.
Yeah. So what is the difference? Like when you design it, do you play a role in actually like making the jewelry too, or is it designing and you work with the jewelry maker? And if I'm using the wrong terminology, tell me, how does this actually work? What is the process?
Well, there's quite a few people that end up touching the actual product in order to get it made. I do all the designing myself with, you know, pencil and paper. And then once the client and I have really decided on the exact design, I work with a CAD designer, and we literally Zoom all day and go over every single detail in 3D. And oh, I wonder if I can show you guys a couple. I don't know what I have open right now. Yeah, I can show you guys like how the CAD experience works if you're interested.
Yes, and I just gave you screen sharing capabilities. Go for it.
Okay, great. So I'll share with you. So this is, the program is called Rhino, but it, you know, I take my sketches and the CAD designer will make the 3D version of my sketches, and then I go through them and we look at measurements, we look at heights, and we look at, you know, proportions, and we look at just every single detail, you know, from 1/10 of a millimeter to like, does this need to be beveled right here? And can we make this a little smoother? And can we make this a little lower? And, you know, do we like this ratio of center stone to side stones or this one? So there's a lot of very hands-on, you know, conversations happening. And this is just, you know, kind of step 2. And then once the CAD is done, it actually goes to a 3D printer where it gets printed in wax or resin. And that is, oh, and this is what it looks like. I don't know if you can see this. This is a tiny little.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah, so it's like a green resin. But it gets printed on a 3D printer. And then it goes into a casting process. So it'll get, you know, put in plaster, and then the plaster will be filled with gold, and so gloss wax casting. And then, you know, from the casting, it then goes to the jeweler's bench where it gets cleaned and polished, and the diamonds get set. And there's a lot of assembly involved. Most of my engagement rings are 2 or 3 piece castings. This is just an example for a client. But then, you know, it goes to from the casting to the polisher, to the setter, you know, back to the bench. There's a lot of cleaning, a lot of polishing between stages. And yeah, that's the process.
So most of the people that are on today have been on multiple of these happy hours. So y'all know to like chime in and ask questions. And a lot of your clients are on here too, your Texas clients. So that's super fun. I think we eat up what you do, and we love that you can take our stones or ideas and turn them into reality, right? The girls that were on a Christmas affair, I'm gonna take it off speaker view. Oh, actually I should put it on speaker view. I actually have on my antlers today that Lindsey made, and pave diamonds, so that I can always remember 2015, a Christmas affair. But any other questions? Like, we've all played with that, and we're about to move into questions about what we need to know about gemstone quality and how to shop for diamonds and other stones too. But any other questions about the actual jewelry making design and process? If Leslie Moore says no, then that means we have our bases covered, because she's the one that always asks all the smart questions that we haven't figured out yet.
I have other questions, but I'm waiting. They might get answered.
Okay, well, so let's move into actual like diamond quality, right? We hear things about like clarity and color and size. What do we really need to know? Like, what's the most important thing that we need to know?
So I always tell clients, first of all, talk to someone before you buy a diamond. And there's a ton of information about diamonds on the internet, and most of it is pretty consistent across the board, but it's a lot of information, and it's not for someone who's buying a diamond for the first time and probably aiming for it to be the only time, which is mostly men. It can be a little overwhelming because it's a lot of money and there's just like, loads of information online. So what I always tell my clients is, there's the 4 C's: cut, clarity, color, and carat. Cut is the only one that can improve the quality of a diamond. Everything else is natural. So everything else is made by, Mother Nature. So I always say, and cut will really increase the value of your diamond if it's cut well, and it will also maximize the size at the same time as maximizing the scintillation, brilliance, etc. So really, cut is kind of the magic quality that you need to stick to. So I really only sell excellent cuts and ideal cuts, and all of those other specs, clarity, color, and carat weight, can be interchanged to find something that fits for the price that you're wanting to spend. So it really all depends on what's important. I've had clients that are like, a D color is definitely the only thing I'm getting, and so I find them one that fits in their budget. And other clients are like, I want, the best, I want the biggest diamond I can get for my budget. And so we find that. But I am I'm pretty picky on all of the specs, and really cut is the one that I don't necessarily negotiate on.
Well, so what question do you get most frequently? Is it that someone's focused on the actual clarity or the color, or is it primarily people saying, I want the biggest diamond that looks good? Or does it depend on the state, like New York and Texas?
I mean, so I will say my New York clients tend to be a little older, and they are, they usually come in together, and, we talk about everything, and it's, I don't have a lot of couples at all where the woman is not involved, or the, person getting the ring is not involved, which I like, because everything I make is custom. So if she doesn't like it, that's a problem. But I will say, New York, my clients tend to be a little bit older, and so they're kind of prepared to say, this is our investment stone. What are we getting? And everybody wants the biggest size they can get for their budget. But I think, everybody's kind of looking for that sweet spot where they can pass it down and still have it retain some value, and be a really good quality stone.
So when we think about passing it down, heirloom quality, is there a magic formula for that?
Usually, within the trade, investment quality is considered like an H color or better, and a VS2 or better, and then really only excellent or ideal cuts. Fluorescence is a bad thing in the trade. So fluorescence, it's a very, it's the spec that no one talks about because it's not a C, but it's a quality in the diamond that too much fluorescence can make it a little bit hazy. So it's not like an inclusion that you can spot and identify. It's more of like a chemical, it kind of overtakes the diamond itself. So fluorescence, obviously it glows in a black light, and so they grade fluorescence based on what color fluorescence it is, if it's got strong blue or if it's got a little orange or all that stuff. But fluorescence usually is bad. So as far as retaining the value of your diamond.
And then when you talk about cut and you're thinking through, this cut is better than another cut. So I know you don't mean cut of shape, but what does someone like us need to know about cut?
So cut is symmetry, how symmetrical all the faceting is, the polish of the facets. So are they polished? Are they well polished? So all the diamonds are polished on a wheel that is like a diamond encrusted wheel. So diamond cuts diamond. And there's all kinds of other little technical, like graining can affect the polish. So graining is like a kind of a ridges on a facet. So polish, cut is really broken down into, polish, symmetry, and actual cut quality. Rounds are graded on an actual cut quality. So it gets very, very technical, and the range of what can be considered an excellent polish and symmetry versus a very good polish and symmetry is, when you like really boil it down, there is a bit of a range within each one of those. So again, it really matters if you look at all the specs. Have an expert look at some of the specs, because depth is really important, because depth determines the overall like visual size of your diamond. So if it's too deep, like cushion cuts, those are the cut of the design of that cut is very deep. So cushion cuts are always going to look smaller than every other shape. So, just little things like that to look for.
So if cushion cuts look smaller, what cut looks larger?
The cut that looks the biggest is marquee.
Okay.
It's huge compared to its counterparts in terms of weight. But, rounds typically face up pretty consistently, large. Ovals and the elongated stones, ovals and emeralds tend to face up a little larger. Asher cuts, which is the square emerald, is also a little deep, just like a cushion. So, yeah, it can be, if you look at all of them next to each other, it can be pretty deceiving.
I think that's fun. I think we all need to make a field trip to see you and to see them all laid out.
Sure.
And drink champagne. Well, so, one of the pieces or a couple of the pieces that I got from you, you sent the appraisals, and historically, I have my nicer pieces of jewelry appraised, but not all of my jewelry appraised. What do you recommend? Like at what point do you decide to have your jewelry appraised and insured? What is the advantage of that? What do we need to learn from a pro there?
So starting with the appraisal, so you want something appraised if you're going to either 1, insure it, or 2, sell it, or 3, pass it down. And if you want to, there's, I think depending on what kind of collector you are, you can really, rack up a jewelry policy. But there's a lot of interesting things to know about insurance coverage too. So first of all, I would insure anything that you plan to pass down at some point. I would insure anything that you would cry if you had to replace it.
That's a good rule of thumb.
And yeah, and always know what your deductible is, because if you're insuring like $1,000 piece of jewelry, that's great. But if your deductible is $700, if you have to file a claim, then you're going to end up spending $300 anyway. So it just depends on the type of coverage that you have. And then the other thing that I will say that I always tell my clients about insurance is a lot of insurance companies do require third-party appraisals. So like I can provide an appraisal based on what I've put into the piece of jewelry. And that is fine for a lot of jewelry companies, because I actually made it, so I know what's in it. But depending on the price point and the insurance company that you're working with, they want a third-party appraisal to verify that what I sold you is legit. And then the other thing is pay attention to the fine details in your policy, because some policies, I think it's mostly homeowners policies that have their jewelry writers, they specify that they do not have to replace your jewelry from the same brand. They can just replace it with similar or like quality. So I use Jewelers Mutual to insure my company, and they offer policies for consumers. And anytime one of my clients files a claim with them, Jewelers Mutual sends them right back to me to just replicate the piece that they made a claim on, which is important, because like a lot of people, if you shop at Tiffany, A lot of insurance companies won't replace it with the name brand. They'll just replace it with something similar. So it can be a little frustrating for people that lose something and they've been paying this insurance policy for, you know, however many years, and then they can't get the same thing back. So that's important to know. And then what else? Yeah, I think that, you know, insurance can get a little tricky, but it's very important to insure anything that's worthy of being passed down.
I just pulled out my insurance policies. I have inflation coverage too.
Okay. So does that cover if the value of the jewelry goes up? Because a lot of times, actually, a lot of people now, like lately, because gold is at a record high, it's like $2,000 an ounce. A lot of people are reappraising their goods, their jewelry, because their appraisals are old and the values are a lot lower. So, and
the vast majority of my insurance plan is actually a Rolex that Jonathan inherited. So it's actually increasing in value because it's a collector's item.
I dealt with a Rolex last week, and it was an 18-karat Rolex. And when they start reproducing the next round of their manufacturing, Rolex is an interesting company, but their watches are going to go up like 40% just because of the gold price. So
that was really helpful. I was thinking about it. I don't know if I know the nuances of my floaters for my jewelry. So really good intel. And Leslie, I'm pulling mine out later today too.
Yeah, well, I had to claim too, you know, because I lost my engagement ring, which I haven't replaced. It's been 8 years.
Lindsey can help you with that.
I can help you with that.
I know you can. I have something I want. The one who's in charge of the checkbook vacillates wildly between, it's like, you're married, why do you need an engagement ring? I get that one day and then something else the other day. So we're still working on that.
Your earrings look amazing.
$75 wedding band in the meantime.
Wait, while Leslie's talking, your earrings do look amazing. So Leslie, why don't you talk us through your process of working with Lindsey and having those amazing earrings that are one of a kind?
So I had a loose stone that I bought on a trip. I had one of, I think it's on this side. Is this the round pink stone? Is actually glass. I think it's on that side. But it was a stone that my grandmother bought my granddaddy in the 30s, and it was passed down to me as my birthstone, and so it's really important to me, even though it's glass. And then the rest of the stones are from my some jewelry that my dad gave my mom for their 25th wedding anniversary. And so Lindsey and I had a pretty quick FaceTime conversation about it. I showed her all the pieces and kind of talked about what I wanted.
Yeah, we went into your closet.
You what?
We went into your closet.
Yeah, we did. And then she came back with some designs and sent me a prepaid super insured envelope, and I packed it all up and sent it to her. And I feel like maybe 6 weeks later, I had some really snazzy earrings back in my possession. So it was super easy and super fun to do. And I feel like you had 3 or 4 different designs that we talked about, and I had a different idea, and she was able to draw that up really quickly and show it to me. And I'm very happy with them. I love them, and they do what I want them to do. They look good with jeans and a t-shirt, and they look good, super fancy. So
good with your green.
Yeah.
Well, I think find like one extra stone to go with it. Like you wanted one extra stone or something, a new stone, or
You're right, Sabra. I do have one extra stone. That's right. And you had like a bunch of different colors because they're super colorful. And so you had 4 or 5 different directions we could take it with the extra stone that I bought to put in with them.
I think we did the yellow.
Yellow was one of them. And like dark green, like an iridescent.
Tourmaline.
Was it a tourmaline? Because I have tourmaline, but it was like a bluer, it was like a teal instead of, yeah, it was like a bluey green and like real, almost kind of iridescent. And then what I ended up with is pink, right? Yeah, this is the one I bought.
Yes. Yeah, that was a pink tourmaline.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, right.
Yeah, that was a fun project to source stones for because there were so many colors.
Yeah, I like all the colors.
And I really love working with gemstones because there's just so many great combinations that can be made.
We're
I
gonna
like that. And they're all like, a lot of them are like immensely affordable.
There's a good range. I mean, it never fails. With my gemstone dealer and I'm like, what about that one? And they're like, oh, that one is, that one is super rare. I'm like, okay.
I thought that when I was in Australia, I thought I might get a stone for my anniversary ring. And I was like, oh, Argyle diamonds, that's a thing from here. And then I was like, oh, they're like $50,000 a carat. Never mind.
Yeah, they make like a palmful. They mine like a palmful every year.
Yeah, I did not get one.
And that mine is closing.
Yeah.
So.
But what's so important about this process that y'all just talked about, and I know this personally from working with Lindsey, is it doesn't matter what you have, right? I mean, Leslie mentioned I had a glass stone. It wasn't even real. And Lindsey doesn't care. And the other thing that I would say is that she also doesn't matter like the length of time. So I have 3 of Lindsey's pieces right now. I think she has all of my random stones in her safe.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is fine because, and I even have a design of what I know I want next, which is a really cool star necklace from diamonds that were I inherited. But I think that's important because whenever I was giving Lindsey all of my random stones, it was a bunch of opals. Like opal is my birthstone, and there might be a couple that might be good, but most of them were just like the fashion jewelry from like when Foley's was a store and you were in high school and your family would buy you like random earrings or a random ring. And I like just kind of threw it at Lindsey. I'm like, what do we do with this? And she was like, oh, we could do something really cool with that. And so I think regardless if it's working with Lindsey, hopefully you work with Lindsey or someone else, work with someone that's like all encompassing and takes what you have and takes what's meaningful for you and makes it into something really, really cool that can become heirloom quality or something that you're proud to wear every single day. And again, just being so gracious. I mean, I think those stones have probably been sitting in her house in her safe for more than a year. And she's like, I need to bring them back. I'm like, no, we'll do something eventually, I promise. But I think that that's another cool thing. When I talked about her being just warm and authentic, I couldn't work with another designer because of how just unintimidating the process is with Lindsey. And going back to what Leslie said about, the packaging and Lindsey sending her the prepaid envelope that was super insured, the same thing I had work done on one of my pieces. And when she sent it back, it was with like jewelry cleaner and it was insured with a really sweet note. And I think that customer experience sets her apart from other designers that I've worked with in the past. But it was a great segue into gemstones. So Lindsey, right, it's not all just about diamonds. What do we need to know about gemstones?
I mean, there's so much to know about gemstones. Gemstones have a totally different, grading system than diamonds. The typical stuff is there, clarity and cut, but gemstones are really cut. Diamonds are cut for precision because the ideal diamond has nothing in it and it's clear. Gemstones are totally different because the color moves in different ways throughout a gemstone, and so you can cut a gemstone in any way. Really, the cutter of a gemstone is such a craftsman because he can find a way to make a sapphire look like this beautiful velvet blue instead of this flat navy. So gemstones are just very fun, very complex, and yeah, it's so interesting to learn how many different places where gemstones come from and just which ones are more precious, and some are more precious than diamonds, and it's so interesting.
So which ones are more precious than diamonds?
Some emeralds can be more precious than diamonds. They are also a lot more fragile than diamonds. So that's the reason they end up being, a bit expensive because a lot of cutters are afraid to touch them for fear of breaking them. But, you know, pigeon's blood rubies can be very expensive, and you know, alexandrites are not quite as expensive as diamonds, but they're really rare. Those are the color change. They change, you know, from like a green to a blue to a brown in different lights. So yeah, there's just like a plethora of knowledge to learn about gemstones.
So what do we need to know? I mean, right, there's some that are lab made. Some, I mean, clearly I know natural is more important, but what do we need to know? What are the core elements that we need to know when selecting a gemstone?
Well, I think the most important thing, it's very important to know if it's natural or lab created. And we haven't talked about lab grown diamonds, but there are lab grown diamonds that are making their way into the retail market. And you know, it's creating some havoc for some people, but you know, lab created means it's created in a lab, so it's not natural. So there isn't really a lot of value in it. It's just a better opportunity for retailers to offer a better price point because natural is usually pretty expensive on the precious gems. But you know, it's up to you if you like a lab created look better, because a lot of the natural ones, you know, the leap from lab created price to a natural price with the same kind of look can be pretty big, depending on what you're looking at. But yeah, it all depends on what you want and what you're having done with it.
Where do treated stones fit in there?
Right in the middle. I mean, treated stones are, you know, so there's natural, untreated, diamonds and gemstones. There are some processes for precious gems, like emeralds will typically have an oiling process done to fill in some of those fissures once they're cut, and that's not a bad thing. It's very, very rare to find a no oil emerald, and sometimes every few years you have to, if you have a really nice emerald, you need to have it re-oiled because it does, the way the chemical structure of an emerald is, that's why they cut it in that emerald cut, because of the crystal structure. It's harder to cut in a round without breaking it. So, but like with sapphires, there is some heating done if they want to make them a little more brilliant. But you know, I always try to find the most minimal treatments. The heating isn't necessarily a you know, a treatment to alter the whole diamond. It's just more of a treatment to kind of I hate to say enhance, but just kind of bring out its natural qualities without actually changing it. So yeah, so there are gemstones that are slightly treated, and then there's, you know, fracture filling and all kinds of stuff that gets into like technical stuff, which can really change the value of your piece.
So tell us more. Like, do you want your fractures filled or not?
No, you don't. You really just want to find a gemstone that's as close to its natural state as possible.
Awesome. Okay, and then the last real question before Leslie Moore jumps in with all of her questions: what is the one piece of jewelry that every woman should own?
This is a hard question.
I gave you a heads up.
I know you did, and I've thought about it for a few days. I think it's a cross between a nice band, like I have some bands on right now that I'm wearing, but a really nice band doesn't have to be a symbol of a relationship or anything. It just needs to be something that you can wear, and it's very low profile. It goes with everything, or a gold bangle of some kind, either with or without diamonds. But both of them just kind of dress up every outfit that you wear. And they kind of make you feel a little more, they make me feel a little more put together.
Well, thank goodness I have a gold bangle that matches those bands that you're wearing right now.
You do.
Okay, Leslie Moore, start shooting with your questions and then everyone jump in.
I think I asked all my questions.
All of them? Anybody else?
I have one. What's your favorite piece you've made?
Oh, I'll show you guys. I actually pulled it up. Actually just finished this. This piece. So I just finished this. This was like a pre-quarantine, mid-quarantine ring that I made for a client. And
An Austin client, right?
an Austin client, yes.
Yeah. It's really beautiful.
So, yeah, I mean, it's hard because everything I make is typically one of a kind. I'll show some of my, my portfolio isn't necessarily totally up to date. I'm redoing my whole website. So everything that you see on this website is going away, but, or coming back in a different form. But this portfolio kind of shows some of my favorite pieces. I love this piece. This is the two-stone ring is, it really comes from the ring that Napoleon gave Josephine in like 1785 or whatever year it was. But he gave her a diamond and a sapphire ring, and it was called the Toi et Moi, meaning you and me. And I did this for a client for their 10th anniversary, and there's an X on the very bottom of it where the bands meet to represent their 10th anniversary. That was a super fun ring. These cufflinks were so fun. This was for an anniversary also. So this is where the couple met and this is where they got married, or vice versa. And then I did this
Wait,
ring.
go up to the 3 rings in the middle.
These.
Yeah, what's the story behind that?
This was a client in Houston, and she had she found me online. She's so nice. But she had again had some, like, she had a couple of bands that her husband had given her, and she wanted to redo them. So we redid her whole engagement ring setting. So we did this little octagon halo around it, around her center stone. And then made this is from the Chance collection. So when I talk about like telling stories with jewelry, so the Chance collection came from a design that I worked with a couple, and the story of how they met really struck me as being very modern. And the two of them they were each with their friends on a Sunday in the meatpacking district in New York, and they went to brunch and they were seated at tables next to each other. And towards the end of both of them finishing their meals, their tables started talking to each other, and he ended up asking her out on a date, and she was like, fine, I'll go on a date with you, I just need to go. They ended up going on a date the next week, and it turns out they found out they had mutual friends that had tried to set them up twice previously over the previous year, and they ended up meeting on their own at a brunch. So the Chance collection is 2 rows that intersect at different points, kind of mimicking fate taking its course. But that's a really fun collection that people love for their weddings and anniversaries. And then this piece, I designed this for her, and I kept calling it a bow tie, and then she was like, no, I call it the infinity, because she was like, my husband and I used to write letters to each other when he was deployed, and he always said, I love you to infinity. And so she was like, I love this design because it makes me think of infinity. So I made her 3 rings, and they look really good together.
Those are
So
so
she wears them all together, like they stack up.
No, she alternates. She alternates them. Sometimes she wears. This one's actually platinum, and the other 2 are rose gold. So she has. Sometimes she'll wear both of the bands, or she'll wear the band and the engagement ring, or sometimes she'll wear this band on her right hand. But yeah, they make a really nice statement altogether. And then this is the sun, moon, and stars. So I like doing these because you can customize them. They can represent your family, the little stars for how many kids you have. I've done these in a few different configurations. They're really pretty. What else? This was a fun guard that I made for someone to hold their engagement ring with the emeralds.
So I have a question about that. How do you stack emerald shapes so that they stack well without necessarily having a guard, or do you have to have a guard?
I mean, you don't have to have a guard.
But
Well,
like stack an engagement emerald cut with, say, a band with emerald cut stones. How would you like stack those?
So I usually try to make my engagement rings more band friendly, so that a band will fit up next to it. A lot of designers will make their emeralds like this. Like this, I don't have a side view of it, but the basket comes down to be almost as narrow as this band, so a band looks really nice against it. But you know, a lot of people they make their baskets a little more cagey, so it makes it hard to put something right up against it.
Yeah.
It just depends on I always try to. I'm working with a client right now, and we're making a pretty wide ring. And she's like, I want to make sure I remember what kind of band I want to wear with it, because I want to make sure it all fits on one finger instead of being too wide. But yeah, it all depends on, you know, what look you're going for as a set. This is one of my favorite pieces that I've made. This little band. Diamonds and sapphires.
So Lindsey, your site is lindseyscoggins.com.
It is lindseyscoggins.com. In the next 6 to 8 weeks, it will look totally different than it does today. But yes, you can find me there.
Leslie Moore, what are you holding up?
This is what I want my next engagement picture to be. That one.
Oh, I love that one.
Me
I
too.
don't have that in my portfolio. Yeah, that was a really pretty ring.
That was at the party at Leslie's house.
I know. I wanted to buy it. I didn't. It got away.
I actually ended up selling that right before the party,
Yeah.
which I was so happy about, but at the same time I was like, no one else has gotten to see it.
I wore it for a really long time.
You did.
It was pretty. That was a really beautiful garnet, like a rhodolite garnet. It was so pretty.
Most of the people on here are from Austin, not everybody. So whenever it's safer for you to come down to Austin and have another party, we'll sign Leslie up for that. Or you can have a smaller one at my home so that we can all try on your stuff and introduce you to some new clients.
Sure, love that.
Any other parting questions for Lindsey before we jump off of happy hour? Lindsey, you haven't had enough wine. You need another sip.
It's actually bourbon.
Of course it is. You're the coolest girl I know.
There's a liquor store around the corner from my office, and so I usually stock up on wine there when I have clients coming by. And you know, one of the reps for this new bourbon company was there, and was like, buy this bourbon. I was like, fine, I'll buy a bottle.
Is it good?
Actually, it's okay. It's not my favorite, but It's here.
Well, I'm not going to ask you the brand if it's not your favorite.
It's called Pinhook. So it's actually, it's a really pretty bottle. So that counts.
It counts. It makes your bar look pretty.
Yeah.
Okay, well, Lindsey, thank you so much. I mean, for being so incredibly generous with your time today, for explaining things we know nothing about, for giving us things to dream about, also just for being a great friend. It really made a Wednesday a lot of fun, and you're the absolute best. And everyone else, loves seeing your faces. I hope everyone has a great rest of your week. We'll give Lindsey the recording and the list of people that signed up today so that she can follow up with everyone, and you can follow her on social media and see her new site soon. And we are going to hit you up for a party next time you're in Austin.
Oh, I can't wait to see everyone. I can't wait to get out of New York. And Holly, thank you so much for thinking of me for this. This was so fun. I really needed it. It's been a long 4 months.
I feel like I haven't seen you in forever.
I know. I haven't been to Texas in 6 months.
Since Leslie's party.
Yeah.
That's tragic.
That was, the end of everything. So.
Well, we're going to have a new beginning soon. But y'all have a great rest of your week, and I'll talk to you all soon. And Lindsey, thanks again so much.
Bye. Thank you again so much.
Bye.